Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said that it would be the most difficult, the most horrendous trial that humankind would face from the time of the creation of Adam until the end of the world. And in his own time, in Medina, there was an individual by the name of Ibn Sayyad. A man. Word spread in Medina that he was able to read people's minds. This is recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. He was able to read people's minds. And the Prophet ﷺ set off with Umar ibn al-Khattab to go and meet him. And he asked him to read what was in his mind. And he said, Ad-Dukh. Ad-Dukh. Prophet ﷺ had in his mind Ad-Dukhan. He got a piece of it, indicating that he was obviously working with what we might call supernatural forces. But we know those supernatural forces are the forces of the jinn. And when the Prophet ﷺ from that confirmed that he wasn't in fact Dajjal, but the suspicion lay in the mind of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Umar asked permission to go and kill him. And the Prophet ﷺ had said, if he was a Dajjal, you wouldn't be able to kill him. And if he wasn't, then I would be known as killing my followers. After this, one of the companions by the name of Tamim ad-Dari, who was a former Christian who converted to Islam, who had set off on a ship with other companions, and the ship became shipwrecked on an island. And he had an experience there on the island. When he came back, they eventually were able to repair their ship, and they came back to Medina. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and he told him what he experienced there on this island. And the Prophet ﷺ had an announcement made in Medina in which he called the people to the masjid. And after he finished praying, he stood up before them and he introduced them to Tamim ad-Dari. Told them about him and had him relate his experience. That they had gone into the island after they were shipwrecked, and they came across a beast that was covered in hair, and they couldn't determine from the hairiness of the beast which was its head and which was its backside. Couldn't figure it out. They looked the same. That's how it was described. And it spoke to them. They spoke to it. It identified itself as Al-Jassas. And it told them about someone in a monastery that is waiting for them. So they went, taking all the precautions. They came into the monastery and they found there a man who met the description that the Prophet ﷺ gave of a Dajjal. And he was chained, arms chained to his neck, feet shackled. And he asked them questions. They answered, explaining who they were, where they came from, etc. And in the end, when they asked him, so who are you? He said, I am a Dajjal. And a time will come, not too long from now, when I will be free. Now, Tamim ad-Dari hadn't heard the description that the Prophet ﷺ had given of Dajjal. This is why the Prophet ﷺ brought him. He was a convert to Islam. He hadn't heard these descriptions. So he had him say to them what they saw, what they experienced. Because this was confirmation to the people. Not that anybody would disbelieve Prophet Muhammad ﷺ anyway. Right? But it was just further confirmation of Dajjal. when would a Dajjal appear? There would be 3 signs before his coming. We said the first sign was that 1/3 of the earth for 1 year rain would stop. The second sign is that in the second year, 2/3 of the earth there would be no rain. And the third sign is that in the third year there would be a drought throughout the world. No rain would fall anywhere on the face of the earth. It might seem impossible to us now, but just remember that the Sahara Desert, the Gobi Desert, all these deserts were once lush with vegetation. They were forests. So if that can happen, then know that a time can come when no rain for 1 year would fall on the earth. Following that, he would be released from the island to Iran, the place where he would first be announced, his presence known in the world. Dajjal has appeared. And he will be accompanied, the Prophet ﷺ had said, by people whose faces look like flat beaten iron. That's how he described it. From this description, before, people had said in the 13th century that this was the Mongols. The Prophet ﷺ had said that he would make contact with the Muslim forces between Syria and Iraq. This is where his forces will have come together. Those following him would have come together, and the beginning of the battle for the world would take place. Forces that he will be struggling against will be the forces of the Mahdi. Again, our children know about Superman, Spider-Man, and all the other men, but they don't know about the Mahdi. He would be one who Allah would raise up amongst the Muslim Ummah in that period, who would reunite the Muslim world and become the world leader. The Khalif, the Khilafah or the Caliphate would be revived at that point. Anyway, his forces would come in conflict or in contact with those of Dajjal. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had mentioned that when he appeared in, or when he appears in Iran, 70,000 Jews of Isfahan wearing their ritual shawls would follow him, would join his forces. But it's not to say that they represented the totality of his forces. Others will join him from all around the world. Muslims will join his forces. What we know of the world today, much of it would be under his control. He would appear after this period of drought, and he will have with him a mountain of bread and a mountain of meat which would follow him. He will call people to believe in him. Believe in him as what? As a prophet? No. We said he would be calling them to believe in him as God, as Allah, to accept him as their Lord.